All right. Once again, thank you. I am very, very pleased to be welcoming the Midcoast Maine Book Arts Group this evening. This is a program that has been created to complement a virtual show, an online exhibit called Structure and Narrative that we have coordinated with the Book Arts Group for the month of September. When this was originally thought up many, many, many months ago, this was pre-COVID-19, and we were really hoping to have an in-person show at the Camden Public Library, but the book artists were gracious enough to consider how this could be done virtually. And I think that we all worked together and did a really nice job. So if you haven't seen the Structure and Narrative exhibit yet, I encourage you to please visit librarycamden.org, and you'll be able to view that by taking a look at the What's Happening calendar. And you can click, there's a link on every single day of the September 2020 calendar. So please check that out and definitely do enjoy it. I also want to mention that the book artists have been kind enough to pledge to donate 20% of sales from the show for pieces that are sold from the show during the month of September 2020. So thank you again so much, book artists, for your support, and thank you to all of you who support the arts out there. I don't want to talk for too long because we have a lot of great things to see. We're going to be visiting the studios of 4 different book artists who are participating in the show. And I have worked with Sandy Wiseman, and she's going to act as the moderator this evening, and she's going to introduce the different book artists and tell you a little bit more about the organization. So at this point, I turn it over to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Julia. I am Sandy Wiseman, and I am a member of the Midcoast Maine Book Arts Group. I am also an exhibiting artist in this exhibition, Structure and Narrative. I want to thank a few thank yous. Thank you first to the Camden Public Library. We didn't know what was going to happen, and we've really appreciated the opportunity for this virtual exhibition. It was a learning curve for all of us, and we've had a lot of conversation about how to do it well and do it professionally. And we've had a terrific organizing group. So first, I just want to thank the members of the organizing group for this exhibition, and they include Abby Reed, Joelle Weber, Paula Blanchard, Cynthia McGuirl. Cindy created the online, or the exhibition catalog, which is online. If you go to the Camden Public Library, you'll be able to open up not only the exhibition, but the exhibition catalog, which will give you more information about each artist. And Paula Blanchard was really essential in providing editing expertise for all of the text in both the catalog and on the website, and she assisted Julia with the publicity. And finally, a big thank you to Julia, because this couldn't have happened without her, and we are so happy with the way it all got put together and the professional aspects of what happened with putting this exhibition online. And we are very grateful to her, although we hope in maybe a couple of years we can all be back in person and do another exhibition that you can actually come into the library to view. The Midcoast Maine Book Arts Group is a collective that formed 2 years ago to encourage, promote, and educate working and aspiring book artists in the Midcoast Maine area. At present, we are about 25 members strong and growing. We meet every other month on the second Thursday of the month in pre- and post-COVID times at Maine Media Workshops in Rockport. And during this particular time, we meet on Zoom. So if you're interested, and all are welcome, please go to our Facebook page, Midcoast Maine Book Arts, and like us, please. Okay, so tonight we're celebrating this exhibition by zooming into 4 different artist studios, which we thought was a really great use of this technology, because when do you go to an opening and get to see the artist studios? So we'll be looking at the studios and with the artists, Rebecca Goodale, Cynthia McGuirl, Joelle Weber, and Dudley Sopp. Each of them have chosen an area of their work or their process or their thinking to talk with us about. You are welcome to ask questions during their presentation via the chat room, And at the end of each presentation, we'll ask a couple of questions, but we'll save the majority of questions for a big Q&A at the end of all 4 of their presentations. So without further ado, I think we'll start, and we're going to go in alphabetical order and zoom into the studio of Rebecca Goodale. The work in our exhibition by Rebecca Goodale is Euphorb arboricole. I hope I did that justice, Rebecca. Also called the tree spurge. It's a cloth-bound flag book incorporating reduction prints and a scroll background. Rebecca has been creating a series of artist books about Maine's rare plants and animals for the last 20 years, although she's occasionally distracted by more common species like the spiders and birds in her own backyard. She's also known for her many collaborative book projects and installations with other artists. Rebecca teaches book arts and design at the University of Southern Maine. Her work is in many collections, including the Maine Women Writers Collection, Bowdoin College, Heron Art Library, and the Library of Congress. Rebecca will be teaching 2 workshops at Maine Media Workshops this fall, one on reduction printing and the vertical banner book, and the other a drum leaf pop-up book. And there's still room in both workshops, although I took one of them today. And you are encouraged to go there and sign up. So take it away, Rebecca.
Thank you, Sandy. I think somehow I'm not on active speaker view. Sandy is. Is that true?
No, you're fine, Rebecca. It looks good.
Okay, thank you. Somehow I can't see myself. So tell me if I'm out of the picture frame. So I wanted to say thank you for agreeing to do a virtual show rather than no show at all. It was exciting for me because I was able to enter in the virtual show a much bigger piece that I couldn't have possibly shown in the library space. So that was thrilling. And that piece is over here to my right. I think you might be able to see in terms of, I'm not very tall, I'm about 5'5", so it's a big piece. It's a flag book. It has a reduction print of the euphorbia and a butterfly in France called the Cleopatra butterfly, and that runs behind the book, and then the book opens and sits on top, and I'll open and close it in a little while. So in preparation for a trip to France, I started to make large pattern drawings about Maine's flora and fauna, thinking about my long ago background in textile design. I thought that if I started to think about repeatable prints, I would be able to use those repeatable prints to create new work. So here are some of my drawings of Maine flora and fauna. This is a pitcher plant and a fly catcher with a red dragonfly. And this one is a large moth with elderberry. You might know this Cecropia moth. I saw one sitting on a gas tank nozzle in Augusta one day. So they like blueberries, they like elderberries. This is a green frog, pollywog, and a common pond lily, and a saw-whet owl and white pinecone. So after I got warmed up working like this for about 2 months, I went off to France and filled some sketchbooks. And when I came back, I started to do the same thing with French flora and fauna. And here you see the original drawing that led to the book that's in the exhibition. It made quite a transformation from brush and ink on paper to reduction block printing into a flag book. Here's just a few others from France. Wisteria with carpenter bees. Another euphorbia with a fly, and Seville oranges. So I have worked a couple others into books, but I haven't completed this series. So here is the book. You can see it collapsed. I've printed on the front cover and the back cover. And when you open it, the flags of the block prints open as if the euphorbia is crawling down the hillside to a French beach. And I wanted to try to recreate my memory of this beautiful plant that was probably 4 or 5 feet tall. And just the color was so spectacular with the turquoise Mediterranean in the background. So I wanted to heat it all up. I had left Maine and it was icy and slushy and gray. And when we got off the plane, it was so beautiful and tropical. So trying to get that feeling back. I like to work with pattern. I also make prints. So a lot of my books are small editions, 2, 4, 10, sometimes 15, but a big edition for me generally is 10 books that are all printed the same way. And I usually decide on form and technique based on what the subject needs to support it. So if I want something really delicate, I might do an etching in terms of the line quality. If I want something bold and colorful, I might go with a silk screen. So I move fluidly from one technique to another. Here's, I'm gonna shift my computer just a little bit. Let's see if you can see this tabletop. This is a book about a stand of smooth winterberries that are just outside my studio window back there, just that way. But this is what they look like in the winter before all the birds come in. And this book is silk screened. It's an interlocking accordion book. It's printed on handmade paper. It's got a gray linear pattern to represent the bark and the trunks and branches. And then it has a red polka dotted pattern because when you look out through the thicket, it's just red dots everywhere. And then I silk screen sheets of red paper and cut them into little circles by hand. And then with red linen thread, I stitched the berries to the thicket, which is a vernal pool thicket of smooth winterberry. This is a threatened species in the state of Maine. Not all of my work is about Maine's rare plants and animals, but it's been something I've been dedicated to for over 20 years. So I have a lot of titles that address that issue. And my most recent book, and then I'll be done. I just want to show you one more book. It's very different in technique. This is all dry point etchings. And this is a wild calla lily. And the wild calla lily, I had seen one before just behind the Stonington dump. And then I hadn't seen it again for years. And I always wondered about it. Was it a runaway up there? Was it an invasive plant? It wasn't on any of my lists of rare plants. And then I found out that it actually can take over, but it is native to Maine. And I was hiking in March because it was such a beautiful spring and we were all quarantined. So I was just outdoors every day. And I found this huge stand of wild calla lilies in Harpswell. And I went back to see them in bloom. And I hope you can see this. Is it I'm upside down, but it's right side too. So here you have layers of prints that I've cut through. It's 3 different plates in repeat. So this plate and this plate are the same, and then there's 2 of the same here and 2 of the same plates back here. So I made two of these books. But then I made a 3rd one and I went wild and completely hand colored it. So there are 3, but an addition of 2 with an AP that's hand colored. So that's what I've decided to show you tonight. You might guess from my studio, it's just chock full of thinking. And I like to work large, and I like to print the same thing over and over again. My background is textile design, and I think I bring that front and center to my books. Thanks again for having me, and thanks for coming to my studio.
Thank you, Rebecca. The comments are flying in here. Impressive, gorgeous, such beautiful work, wow, etc., etc. People are very excited about the work. Somebody early on asked what a reduction print was, and then somebody answered it, and I'll read you the answer, and you can add to it. You ink the block, print. Then you cut away, ink the remainder, print. Cut, ink, print. Cut, ink, print until not much is left. Great technique, requires thinking ahead. What do you say to that?
That's a great description.
Yeah, and Richard Wright Smith reminds us that you're going to be teaching that at Maine Media Workshops. It's September 24th and October 1st, 2 Thursday evenings with a week in between. For that's the one I signed up for all of us to practice that technique. So that's that was great that question came up. I have a question. You're obviously a very skilled textile artist and printmaker, and I wonder why the book has become your preferred mode of expression, and as opposed to just doing prints or other textiles. What is it about the book that allows you to express what it is you want to express?
No, I just love the book. I made my first book when I was 5. I think from the beginning, I was a bookmaker. And then I learned a lot of other techniques that I could bring to the book. The book is so complicated. There's so much to manage. It's like having 10 balls in the air at least. And you hope you can bring it all together into a cohesive whole. And I like the excitement and the challenge. And it's a little scary, and I like that too. It gets your adrenaline going. I think I have to be wildly in love with the idea to turn over a lot of time to it. My work sometimes takes a year or 2 years to get to the finish line. So it does involve a lot. The single print does not interest me. So although occasionally I do that, it's just a short amount of time. So my favorite part about printmaking is seeing the whole edition at once. And of course, sometimes they go off into the world alone, but I love the whole edition together. Not so much with the books, but the printed pages. I like seeing them all.
Great. Thank you. I think a lot of us probably agree with you on that. And your studio looks fabulous. I'd love to come visit you sometime.
You're always welcome.
Our second presenter is Cynthia McGuirl. The piece in our exhibition, her piece in our exhibition is entitled Nonsense, which is an accordion style book with original woodcuts and hand lettering. In her own words, Cynthia says, "I am the granddaughter of Armenian genocide survivors who settled in Providence, Rhode Island in the early 20th century. I attended art school, which saved my life, moved to Maine, which saved my soul, and pursued a career as a functional hand weaver. A series of intense dreams about my ancestors led me to seek a more narrative mode of expression, which manifested in printmaking and artist books." Recent exhibits of Cynthia's include anthology books and art at the Mary Spring Art Center in Bodenham, Maine, and When Will We Ever Learn at the Yvette Torres Gallery in Rockland, Maine. In the winter of 2020, her piece, Old Maid, was featured in the Union of Maine Visual Artists Journal. She teaches book arts and marbling at various locations and at her studio I live in South Thomaston. She lives in Thomaston, Maine, which is where her studio is. Okay, Cynthia, you're on.
Okay, I'm not sure. Are you seeing me? Yeah, okay. I'm going to let my partner, James, is going to be the videographer. And he's going to I'm going to start here. When you first come into my studio, you will see my books I have on display here. I've got this nice little cabinet with drawers where I can store. One thing about bookmaking is you really end up with a lot of stuff. That's for sure. You can see I have drawers full of paper that I've made, marbled paper. And I also do more sculptural work, and I think that's how I got started using copper as my book covers. I come from a background as a weaver. I was a professional hand weaver for about 25 years, selling mostly women's clothing and scarves and things like that. And then I really started having ideas about stories that I wanted to tell that started out with the stories of my ancestors. And so I started doing printmaking, and I've done a lot of etching, and that you work with a metal plate. And I'm going to take you around my studio and show you the different ways. I think I chose bookmaking, and I really like it because I start with an image, like here's a book, and that's an etching of, I call it the snake cane from a dream I had. And you can put it together in different ways with words. I often do cutout words from marbled paper and then glue them onto the pages. This one's called diarcation. And then I stitch in some cut etchings and have some kind of fun little movable parts. Pockets with artwork in them. Little words that get stitched on so the stories come out or give you a little idea. I kind of like the idea of people reading into my books what they want to see and relating it to their own stories. So I'm going to take you around now. I've been, since we've had this COVID pandemic, I've started doing oil painting, which I've done on and off over the years. And I've really been obsessed with this image of a woman with a bone. And you can see some different ones in process here. And I'm still kind of figuring out like what it all means, but it started with a piece I did last year called Old Maid. And in the back image is a woodcut. So I'm going to take you over to my press, one of my presses. I have several small presses, but this is a woodcut that I carved with the image of a woman with a bone. And it started out actually as a lithograph. And then I saw the bone sort of instead of shading, and I just developed it and really liked it. And so when this was done, I marbled some paper just with a one color that I wanted as the background. And then I put it here. This is called a proofing press. And you put, this has a wood block in it of the bone. This is a series I'm doing for another book. And so, you ink it up and you turn it over and then you pull this across, and that's how you print instead of sort of rubbing it. But this also does type. So I can arrange letters. I don't have anything set up now, but you can see these, lead numbers and letters in all different sizes. So I set that up on there too, and then I can do little books. Sometimes I do, a more traditional kind of book. And sometimes I'll do a sheet, just like a one-page sheet. Sometimes I'll do bigger letters, or just very simple. This is Women as Seen by Bad Men. It's a sort of a series in the works. I'm going to show you over here. This is the piece that I have in the show called Nonsense. And it sort of ends up in this lampshade picture. And how it started was, I had extras of these, of the image of that woman. And so I cut them out, and I started doing some writing that I call sort of it's words without meaning. And, I make a lot of grids to help line things up. So you can see, to do that writing and keep it all straight, instead of having all these lines that I have to erase later, I'll put my paper in here, and then I can really eyeball it from side to side. And then I take an image and stitch it on. And this paper was marbled originally, a big piece, and then cut up. And that's sort of how the idea for this piece is too. You can see how they're stitched on. And so I really like that double image that you get. And I use just a Japanese hole punch to make the holes. And I'm going to show you a couple pieces of equipment, and I think that's probably going to be. I have a metal shear that I originally bought for cutting up etching plates, and but it works great for a book board. So it's a really great tool that I use. And a lot of people ask me about the copper and how I work it, and it's a very low-tech technique that I use. So I buy roofing copper, or different lightweight copper, and then I mark it, and I cut it out with the combination of the shear and a hand tool. I usually make a pattern first. You can see there's a pattern here, and then I mark it with just a Sharpie marker where I want holes. And I have enough experience with it now that you can see this piece is a box that I made. It's folded up, and then there are holes, and then I use waxed linen to stitch it together. And I have a little hole punch, just a little hand hole punch that I make the holes with. And I heat it up just with a little torch. You can see my little collection of torches over there. And then I hammer it here on my little anvil. I've got lots of little hammers and things. And then it gets flattened and sanded and waxed.
Hold your book and put it in the case.
Okay. So yeah, I'll show you how this one ended up here. I made a pattern for the box. First I made the text block, and it folds out into a half circle like this. And then it's an accordion. So it's a traditional kind of book in some ways. I really like how it can change. Then it goes into the box. It's lined with felt. So, yeah, if you have any questions.
Put that big box.
Thank you, Cindy. If you've never been to Cindy's studio, it is an amazing place with terrific tools and processes that she's very, I don't know, that's just so organized and so just so much to learn there from her, because I think Cindy has an incredible gift for lots of different techniques and processes. Someone says they love how sculptural your work is and the stitching combined with the printing and the copper. So that's one comment. I'm curious about, you talked in your bio about your family's history and the Armenian genocide, and I'm wondering if the work still continues to be about that, or you're moving on, or is there more that you're wanting to say about that portion of your history?
I think it's still rooted in that, but I think that gave me an awareness of just a lot of issues around equality and justice, and especially in regards to women and how women are treated in different cultures. I try to have a little bit of a sense of humor about it all because it's a pretty grim topic, and I think with books and imagery, I can do that. I can make it serious, but also funny in a way with some of the things that I write. So,
great. On the website at the Camden Library, Cindy has the book Nonsense, which she does read to us or show us. So be sure to look at the website and see her in action on the video, which was really nice to include that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks. Third presenter is Joelle Weber, and the book in the exhibition is called Milkweed Seed Fairies, which is a Japanese trifold box with pop-up landscape. Joelle also runs the Mermaid Bindery, tucked in the heart of Midcoast, Maine, which offers limited edition artist books along with bookbinding and box building services for fellow creators. Joelle was hooked at age 7, binding her first pamphlet book. It seems like a theme here tonight. Showing an early interest in the book art, she had the good fortune to learn from many talents in the field. In 1996, Joelle began her career providing binding support in other studios. Over the next 15 years, Mermaid Bindery traveled throughout Maine, selling journals and treasure boxes at fairs, while continuing to bind for clients at home. But recently, Joelle has transitioned away from craft work towards artist books that combine her almost 40 years of collecting binding techniques with her love of philosophy, nature, literature, and sculpture. Joelle. Joelle?
I forgot to unmute myself, sorry. Thank you, Sandy, and welcome to Mermaid Bindery, everyone. It's really great to be here tonight. When I set out now to start one of my artist books, I always know that I'm going to make more than one. And so that gave me the opportunity tonight to be able to show you this piece, Milkweed Seed Fairies, that I did for this exhibition. I was able to set up my studio in a way that you can see the second book in its pieces. But first I wanted to show you the mock-ups. To begin every artist book that I do, which is usually a movable and sculptural, it requires a mock-up to be able to just put those thoughts into physical form. So I began with just a very simple thought, and I knew that I wanted this story to be able to, I wanted the visual to be able to feel like you're walking down that main dirt road. So this was the original thought. The next thought I had was you need to protect your paper with a book cover. and that I wanted to have a milkweed seed wand, and this is just a mock-up, but to be a part of that structure. And I figured out how to attach the paper pop-out element to the edge of the book board, So you're seeing it here. And I should say a mock-up is really just getting your, figuring out all of the structural things that you need to figure out without using the really good materials, without using the good papers and the good fabrics. So it's just plain paper, it's bare book board. But you see in the second one, I'm starting to build it up to scale, and I'm figuring out where I want the narrative to fit in and how the trees are going to be designed. In the third mock-up, this is where every single piece in this mock-up is now a jig. It becomes the actual blueprint for the piece that you see in the exhibition. So from this mock-up, I'm able to now work with the good materials to make sure that I can, that all of these movable parts are gonna function together, not just for me who kind of built it and knows how, but making it foolproof for everyone to be able to use it. So moving around the room, we're gonna see how those parts start to come together. To begin with, I don't know if it's easy enough to see, but to begin with, I took a really good picture of the milkweed seed wand while it was in its parts, while it was a mock-up, so that I knew how to put it back together once I made the jigs to create what is the milkweed seed fairy wand. And so you can kind of see, you want to build something that looks lively and three-dimensional, even though as a pop-up element, it has to be flat. It has to go back into a flat book when it's closed. So what you also see here is the trees that came directly from that mock-up. And this is the paper that it began with, just a plain brown. And I chose different pigments to create a paste paper, which is an element of page decoration that a lot of bookbinders use to liven up a dull brown paper or to add more interest into the book. Next, I'm going to show you another set of paste papers for this project. And these are the paste papers that I wrote the calligraphy on. When I set out to bind a book, I design a letter hand for it. And I'm not designing this out of thin air. There are a lot of exemplars that you can choose from, but you choose different details from different letter forms that you feel really speaks to the narrative that you want to express. And so I figure out that exemplar, my own exemplar, and then I get to writing. And I'm holding, it's a little obnoxious for you, but I'm holding this sideways on purpose. I'm a left-handed calligrapher, and this is how we write. We write sideways down the page so that we don't rub our hands through the lettering. One other little detail I'll show you that you can't really see in the pictures online is that if you look at the O's, they're little swirls, airy swirls, like the track of a seed. And at the top of each of those swirls is a little milkweed seed. So throughout the entire book, these little milkweed seeds are floating around. Just all the little details that you think of to go into an artist's book. Next, kind of go around the room a bit. I'm going to show you my board shear. It's very similar to Cynthia's. And this is where sort of the structure of the book begins to come into shape. And if you look down here, you see it's a foot pedal, and I'm lifting the blade and sliding the board under, keeping your hand away from the danger zone. And I'm actually pushing towards a metal bar here to keep my board square to the blade. And I lift my knee and press down, and it goes through just like butter. So you get a nice square, but more importantly, you get a nice square cut, which is important in bookbinding to build everything you need to build. So the structure starts coming together. All those fancy papers that you paste papered are put around the board, and you got your fabrics and your hinges, and you can kind of tell how that tree structure that we saw earlier will come together. And once that's all built, then you can start playing around with the final details, which are the leaves and the weeds. So a couple of notes on the leaves. These little leaves I stitched with decorative paper. And to do that, you need to poke your holes in the paper first. Paper is not as forgiving as cloth when it comes to stitching through. And so I have all of these little jigs that give little patterns into some of the leaves. And so those are some of the details. And I also used the Japanese screw punch in one of my jigs. It comes in a lot of different sized bits, so you can be artistic and express yourself in that way. And just to show you, you just simply press down, and it's a circular screw action. That blade is nice and sharp and precision. It's a Japanese screw punch. So the last thing I designed, and it was the hardest thing to design, were the actual weeds along the dirt road. When you think about the natural weeds, they're just a snarly mess. And I looked at pictures and I wandered the roads and I tried to figure out how to pick out structure that I could create to create the collages. So finally, I just stopped looking at things and decided to make a really quick sketch. And what came of that was grass, and then a couple of spirally and interesting bushes, and of course the milkweed itself. So finally, what I'll show tonight is just the setting up of the book. Let's see if I can get that. And to see sort of the movable parts come to life. So the book opens in a trifold. I take out my wands and stand it up. And here I'm able to spread out that landscape, spread out that structure. Oops, there it goes. And make sure that the paper stays just where you want it, so it gives it a really nice display. And there it is. Milkweed seed fairies.
Thank you. That is, as someone just commented, this is magical. And I mean, that's part of what you were, I think, after.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, of it all. Thank you for all giving us not only the steps of how it all came together, but the tools and the processes. You know, it's so hard to imagine how we do things like this. And I was thinking about how you were so involved with binding and the very precise skills that you had to learn early on, and now this entry into artist books, which is much more imaginative and lyrical or magical, as someone said. And I wonder where's the satisfaction? Is it, you know, does it pull on each other? One pulls on the other, or how do they complement one another?
It does, actually. I'm going to raise my camera just a little bit, just to show you. Behind me here is that 40 years worth of collecting techniques. All of these are little workshops or learning from books, so yeah. I love that question, because I started writing beyond the classes, the English classes that you take in high school. I started writing for myself in high school. And so this particular piece of writing began there. And so now that I feel like I'm old enough to know better, I have all of this experience with the technique, and I have all of you know, these binding skills, and all the different papers that I've collected and the different techniques. I feel like now I can really dive back into some of my earlier writings and dive into my love of literature and poetry, dive into the imagery that I see just walking around every day, which is where a lot of my own writing comes from. And it's really exciting. And so like talking about the the mock-ups and just all of the details that you have to go through in your fine-tuning and fine-tuning and fine-tuning. Writing is very similar. When you write a script, when you write a poem or a short story, you're continually going through it to fine-tune and fine-tune and fine-tune that writing. And so I feel like the process really overlaps in that way. And to be honest, this particular piece of writing, there was a lot of revision that went into just getting the words to look nice within this particular landscape. So there was revisions in that way too. So it does overlap quite a bit.
Yeah, and people are commenting about all of your mock-ups and jigs and the process, and understanding how your thought process goes from one step to another through those mock-ups and jigs. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Our fourth presenter is Dudley Sopp, and the piece in our show that she is exhibiting is called The Mystery of Five, which is a trifold book comprised of original drawings completed in walnut ink, bound in a letterpress printed Japanese book cloth, and encased in walnut. There's more, but you can go online to see the whole description. Dudley is a visual artist, a writer, and a linguist whose paintings and artist books reflect the natural world. Keeping multiple journals and restoring habitat on her property in Lincolnville, Maine are seasonal activities feeding directly into her paintings. Her artist books examine our responsibilities to the earth. Dudley's paintings are included in the collections of 21st Century Museum hotels, the Portland Museum, and the Bates College Museum of Art, as well as other university and museum collections nationally. Her books are held in the special collection libraries of Bowdoin College, the University of Kentucky, and Yale University. Her installation, Geologics, was included in the Environmental Invitational at Green Hut Galleries in Portland, Maine, a solo exhibition, Landscapes, Jars, and Vessels at Mormon Gallery, occasioned a conversation about the cities, continents, places, and objects that inform her recent paintings. Dudley was born in Lexington, Kentucky, graduated from the University of Kentucky with a BA and MA in modern foreign languages, and went on to continue postgraduate studies in drawing and painting at the Height Art Institute, University of Louisville. She has lived in Maine since 1996. Dudley.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Am I there?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I can't see myself. So,
yes.
So hello, everybody. And thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Julia, for making this opportunity possible. So as Sandy kind of suggested, I have multiple practice. I am a painter and I work with artists' books, and I also am engaged with habitat restoration and preservation here in Lincolnville. I want to talk about books in my practice today because that's why we're all here, I think. And books are a bit different for me from painting. One is a very solo practice. The other involves collaboration and working with people and community. So as Sandy said, I was born in Lexington, Kentucky. I grew up there, and in a world where books and history and writing were paramount, not only in my family, but as part of Lexington's culture. Lexington and central Kentucky then had and still have a number of private presses, presses that produced small limited editions, usually on very fine paper, and using letterpress as the primary method of printing. So these were not artist books, they were referred to more as fine press books or private press books. And one of my very first books was this one, Mr. Pooh's Discovery. It's the story of a little Dutch mouse who discovered how to make butter. It is a private press book. It was printed by Burr Press in Lexington in 1947. And what I love about it, and I marked a page here, is this combination of text, I'll hold it this way, and these beautiful little line drawings in blue ink. So this was my, this was my exposure to books as a kid. And when it came time to think about making books as part of my practice, I actually started by responding to an invitation from Andrew Gay, who was a poet and playwright in Belfast. He asked me if I'd be interested in working with him to do a book that contained his poetry and my images. And we both agreed that they should not be illustrations, they should be images. So what I did was produce a group of monotypes. And the book that resulted is this, A Butterfly Careless, and it comes in a slipcase. So this is a fine press book. I had not made the leap to artist books at this point. But the images clearly refer to the natural world. This is one, and they are abstract, but you can see the references to the natural world. And I want to read you one of Andy's poems as well, just because a haiku is brief, and this is a good one. Early sunrise. I watch shamelessly as hill trees take off their night clothes. So his poetry is sometimes whimsical, sometimes more serious, but always referring to the seasons, always bringing the natural world in. Moving forward some years, in 2013, I was invited by Susan Smith at the University of Maine to do work for an exhibition that she called the Blue Marble Project, Turning in Your Hand. And she gave each of the participants a blue marble and asked us to respond to that, thinking of the marble as that pale blue dot that we see from space, that is the Earth. And so in response to her invitation and having the marble to look at, I came up with a process where I made a drawing a day for a month in 2013, and also so I made the drawing, and then with the drawing, I made a journal entry. And I made, the book was a digital book, so it only ran on an iPad, looped on an iPad, but the pages, as you can do with digital books, but not with actual ones so much, the pages turned and flipped and revolved in the same way that you could say the Earth turns in space. I loved what I did, but then I was left kind of feeling, well, I really want a physical book. And it took me several years. That was in 2014, the exhibition. In 2017, I got in touch with Rebecca Goodale, and because I knew she knew everything about books and everyone about books. And so in January 2017, I went down to Freeport and met with her, and she told me all kinds of wonderful things, but she also put me in touch with Richard Wright Smith, who I know is on this call because I've seen his comments. Richard also has work in this exhibition. And so Richard was able to make that idea that I have happen, of a book that you can turn in your hand. So this is the book. It is called, Is There Something We Can Do? And that title I kind of borrowed and tweaked from Space Odyssey, the song where there's nothing we can do. And I think, given all we face in the world, there is something we can do. And the book's narrative hints at that. So just, you can turn the book in your hand. It is a spiral accordion, or a star accordion book. So it can be set up as a sculpture and looked at from above has a round star shape. Each page is devoted to one day. So there is the drawing. Let me do it this way. There is the drawing, and then there's the journal text. So the journal text, I'll just read this one because that's one that's open. Day 5, erase a drawing and sprinkle with dried watercolor, spray. The weather is overcast. The perfume of sandalwood, rosebay, or jasmine cannot travel against the wind. So the journal notes talk about the process for making the drawing, that I erased an old drawing and made a new drawing in its place. And then there's a note about the weather that day and the color of the ocean on most days. And then I added this bit of Buddhist text, and it's those bits of Buddhist text on each day that carry the narrative forward, so that when you reach the end of the book, you know, you get to the halfway through and then you turn it and go back the other way. At the end of the book, you have kind of completed a journey, and there are some hints about how we might how we might construct our lives, structure our lives in such a way that the earth and our lives are better, and not, you know, so that there is something we can do. This book, there are 50 copies, and Richard also created the slipcase for half the copies and a really gorgeous box that contains a blue marble and one of the original drawings for the other 25 of the books. So that came about in 2017, and then last year, now it seems many years ago, but 2019, Richard and I worked together again on The Mystery of 5, which is the book that's in this exhibition. And Richard brought into the collaborative process Chris Merchant, who is a woodworker. And Chris made the Walnut Case that houses the book. So I'm not quite sure which piece to show you first, but maybe the Walnut Case, since that houses the book. It's a little bit heavy, but it's nice and solid. It's 19 inches in the long dimension, and it opens so that the book sits inside. I don't know if you can see. The book sits inside, and there's a separate compartment for some of the pieces that go with the book. The book itself is a triptych of 3 walnut ink drawings. So again, I'll back up a little bit. And then on the back of the triptych, there is a poem that is, so all of the printing on the book is done letterpress by Richard at Maine Media Workshop. The poem is one that I wrote, and it is in response, well, I'll get to that in a bit when I talk about concept a bit more, but the other 2 pieces that go with the presentation of the book, and this is where I actually got put my hands to work and did something manual. There is a presentation cloth of silk doppioni, and that I hand rolled the hems on. So I had to bring my sewing skills back to life after many years of not. And then also there are 2 skeleton keys that accompany each book. And they hint at the unlocking of the mystery in the title. And so I got to make monkey fobs for those. That was fun. Thinking about, you know, when I decide that a book needs to be needs to happen. Where I start is with a group of drawings or paintings that I've done sometime in the past. But they seem to want to be, if not in a portfolio, in something more solid, in a book that you can take out and has a continued implied narrative. So in the case of The Mystery of Five, those drawings were done in 2004 in response to what we were learning about Abu Ghraib and the torture of the prisoners there. And I was so horrified by the images that we were seeing and by what was happening that I wanted to somehow deal with that in drawings. I chose walnut ink and mucilage. Mucilage is that school glue that we used to use. As those were my mediums, and I poured them on the paper and moved the paper around to get the forms that resulted, in the hope that I could express somehow the suffering that I was learning about. Then that suffering, when I began to think about these drawings as a book, that suffering was what dictated the triptych form, because the triptych form has religious overtones for me. It has been used so often in medieval and Gothic and religious art to present a tableau of suffering or of other religious experiences. The title of the book, The Mystery of Five, refers to the five mysteries of Shiva. So there I'm bringing in Hindu traditions. And then the poem on the back is about the mysteries, and it places us as central to the unlocking of the mystery, that the final mystery is when we understand that we are part of the natural world and that we achieve a state of grace through that understanding. The skeleton keys, as I mentioned, are kind of there to unlock the mystery. So the full presentation for the book is on the website in the catalog, and I hope that that everyone will go there and see those things, because they're beautifully done by Cindy and Paula and Julia. That's kind of all I got, and I would love questions, of course.
Thank you, Dudley. Thank you. The work is so exquisite and so beautiful. And
thank Richard for that.
Yeah, I know, and it's a collaborative. I mean, but also the concepts. You know, the thoughtfulness behind which people are commenting about your thoughtful work, and you know the combinations. And I'm always struck in not just with your work, but in you know the combination of referencing some brutality and then combining it with beauty. You know, trying to make some kind of marriage between those two ideas in the hopes that the viewer or the reader will not be, you know, so horrified, but able to find some way of proceeding in the world. And I think it makes it says something about where we are right now, I think, you know, trying to find our way and how we're all dealing with the current situation. I don't know if you want to make any comment about that.
Gosh, that is, I think you're absolutely right that there is that understanding that we need to move through this situation that we're in making these drawings. This is right side. It struck me because I wanted to convey suffering, but it also at the same time struck me that they were turning into these rather graceful forms that to me seemed like dancers. You know, that beauty can be born from pain, and that is in spite of ourselves, in spite of how we feel, that can happen. I know there are philosophers who have written more eloquently about that and why it happens than I really can express, but there certainly was that process happened when I was working on those drawings.
Thanks, yeah. Well, thank you all. I invite any further questions. Someone has just written, Dudley, that your concept development evolving into a book. Your concept development evolving into a book is fabulous. Thank you so much. And someone else has said very meaningful work. Thank you. I think we can see, before I hand it back to Julia, that the artist book field can be, books are serious, they're whimsical, they can be very factual, fictional, they can be visual and verbal at the same time. They contain information and memory, and they suggest feelings, emotions, and they are object lessons for us. And that there's an objectness about a book that is different from other forms of art. And add to that the work of an artist who is involved in the actual printing, folding, stitching, collaging, binding. You see that there are many combinations of ideas and structures. And that is the concept behind our exhibition structure and narrative. So I hope that this Zoom event, zooming into the artist studios, has been meaningful and helpful to people to think about artist books. And with that, I probably will hand it, I'm not seeing further questions. I'm going to hand it back to Julia. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. That was so interesting, and I really appreciate how very different each of the presentations were. I feel like I have so much more appreciation for everything that I've seen in the structure narrative show so far. I encourage you all, if you've enjoyed this tonight, to please visit librarycamden.org, where you can view the show. Several of the artists have included videos also, which has really helped, I think, enhance the presentation. As Sandy mentioned, you can also view and read the entire catalog of the show's collection, which dives in a little bit deeper to the pieces. So again, you are all always welcome to attend any of our Camden Public Library programs. They are free. We do them a couple times a week. Visit librarycamden.org to find out more. And once again, thank you to everybody. If you enjoyed this, you can watch it again on our YouTube channel. So I look forward to seeing you in the future, and everyone have a great night. Take care.